coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's some money. Go see a Star Wars.
But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Welcome back to Long Walk Talks. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am here to introduce my co-hosts, the almost birthday boy, Stan Wilson Lee.
Hello, it's my birthday tomorrow.
And the still like 7 months away from his birthday, just like me, Chris Wilson Barnes.
Happy birthday,
Better
Chris.
start planning now.
We already have. And today,
I got your present.
we are going to be continuing and actually finishing out our Perfect Tens discussion with my fourth Perfect 10 film, 2004's Layer Cake, which I think this, along with the Stan, your pick, The Host, is probably the more obscure films that we've discussed. Everything else, I think, has been pretty mainstream up until like I said, The Host, and now Layer Cake.
I had one actual memory of knowing what this movie was before I sat down and watched it for the first time.
What was that memory?
I don't remember what movie it was, but I remember being in the theater, I guess in 2004, and this played as a trailer ahead of it, and that's all I remember about it.
Do you remember, did the trailer like try to play up the action movie, or try to play it up like it was an action movie?
I feel like a little bit. It was very vague. It did not show you anything of what it really was.
Because this movie stars a pre-James Bond Daniel Craig.
That's what I was going to ask, if this was
It was 2004, yeah.
Yeah, this is the film that got him noticed to
the running.
Yeah, into the running as Bond. So it makes it like the aftermath of the marketing for this is very interesting because it was a moderate hit in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it really did well here in America at all until Daniel Craig got cast as James Bond, and
Matthew Vaughn got kick-ass. Is that?
Well, that was a few years later, but I saw this movie solely because I had seen Casino Royale, loved it, and then was walking around a Blockbuster one day, which is a very old-fashioned sentence to say, and I saw the cover of Layer Cake, which it was completely different than like any of the UK releases. For some reason, they had changed the A in layer to a 4.
Yeah.
And the E in cake to a 3. And the cover, they photoshopped Daniel Craig's character, Mr. X, wearing one of his nice suits, but they photoshopped that gun into his hand so that he's holding it like James Bond. And then behind him,
the gun he hates to have.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a very un-Bond character in this movie.
And then behind him on the DVD cover, they've got Sienna Miller in her lingerie from that hotel scene. And that's it. That's the cover of the DVD.
That might be in the extras because, like I said, I borrowed your DVD to watch this, and they had a what essentially was a movie poster gallery of all the different posters. Most of them were not that. Most of them had some form of the mirror scene where he's at his mirror sink and it's reflecting across.
Well, with this being one of the more obscure picks that we've gotten this year, I want to talk briefly about the plot, in case because I'm just operating on the assumption that most people probably haven't seen this film.
No.
It is currently, as of December 2022, streaming on Hulu and Freevee through Amazon Prime.
I'd go for Hulu if you're looking to stream.
Yeah, if you're going to stream it, watch it on Hulu. The ads in Freevee are ridiculous, incredibly frustrating. The ads will pop up in the middle of lines.
Before we started recording, I said the algorithm has completely destroyed the art of the TV edit.
Right.
They're not placed at an organic point where it seems natural for an ad to dip in. It just starts, and YouTube is one of the worst offenders.
Yeah.
And like Snatch, there's such a rhythm to Layer Cake that the Freevee ad placement really does work against the flow, even though it's in sections and at the end of scenes, maybe. So it's like maybe not totally destroying a rhythm, but it does. It really chops into it.
It does, yeah. So Layer Cake stars Daniel Craig as the protagonist, unnamed protagonist.
Quadruple X.
That little bit worked on me because I didn't realize he was unnamed until the end.
Right.
When they do that little meta thing.
The credits refer to him as Mr. Quadruple X.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this podcast, we're just going to call him Mr. X. But he is a basically middle-level cocaine dealer. He deals in kilos and...
Which he hilariously tries to justify at the beginning of the movie.
Right. He doesn't deal to, low-level... Well, he distributes to dealers, not on the street level in low amounts. And so he has been socking his money away for an early retirement. And we know how well, early retirement works for movie protagonists.
Basically, he treats it like a business, and he's about the only person who does, because he's treating it like, I'm going to do this, get my money, and get out.
Right. Which was amusing to me watching this in the context of 2022, because his retirement plan is to cash out $1 million or £1 million. Which I'm sure, like by 2004 standards, it's like, yeah, $1 million, a nice round number to retire on. But
and in pounds, it's even higher than American dollars.
Right.
At that time, like $2 million.
Right. Now, living in a world of Musks and Bezoses, $1 million is nothing to scoff at, but still, the drug trade in 2022 should have netted him a lot more than $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
But it very much a product of his time.
But he does have other people he pays, though, and he's
Yeah.
really good at. He's a really great boss because.
Well, yeah, he runs it like a
nobody's-
proper business. You
Yeah.
pay your people what they're owed, so they do their job for you.
Yeah.
And he, as far as we know, none of his employees take off the top, or skim off the product, and he definitely doesn't skim off the product. So the idea that he's getting what he needs. So at that time, with the fact that he was paying people to retire him with $1 million is, £1 million is still.
And it's especially funny because the plot of the film sees him hemorrhaging money trying to pay people. What happens afterwards, the plot of the film is just a train wreck, honestly, of other people's schemes fucking with his retirement plan. He gets hired, or he gets strongly asked by who is essentially his boss, this gangster named Jimmy, to locate an associate's daughter who has gone missing. At the same time, there's a group of wannabe thugs and gangsters who have ripped off Serbian war criminals for 1 million hits of ecstasy.
Well, they don't know that all they know is like he's supposed to be coming back with a batch of drugs to sell to pad it.
So Mr. X is supposed to navigate the sale
Yep.
of these 1 million tabs of ecstasy, but has now earned the ire of Serbian war criminals.
He's a middle manager in the business of crime.
Right. It turns out the person whose daughter he was hired to find is another big-time gangster named Eddie Temple, played by fucking Michael Gambon, who's
Yeah.
just brilliant in
This was like
movie.
the first thing, like the last thing people knew him from before he replaced his Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just there are a lot of plot threads in this movie that come together to conspire against Mr. X, who just wanted to run a business and retire.
Yeah, he's a bigger gangster, but he's more or less like more white collar than everyone else.
Yep.
And I know I could have checked, media for this, but the actor that played Jimmy reminded me a lot of Bricktop. They're not the same folk.
No, not the same
but
guy.
they're
No, Bricktop is Alan Ford. I'm not sure the actor who plays
Yeah.
Jimmy Price. I think it's Jimmy Price.
And I will say overall, if you're looking for, I see why this snuck its way in with Snatch. I was going to say, because if you were looking for a vibe for this movie, it's what if Snatch was more cynical and depressed?
Right. And I didn't do this on purpose, but when I picked my films, I picked 2 80s cult classics and
Yeah.
2 British crime films. Which we'll talk about later. Like I spent the last year thinking about changing up my list. Like Ghostbusters and RoboCop were always going to be on it, but these last 2 slots, I was like, oh, 2 British crime films. I love them. They're perfect 10s, but are we going to discuss them? But yeah, in the end, I just went with my initial
Well, it's
instinct.
like
I mean,
it's
that's
like
fair.
me doing Old Boy and
The Host.
you know. So it's like, you know, if you're here, you're probably chances are you haven't seen those in the Korean form. So
Right.
I mean, you know, despite yourself, your taste snuck in. So
It's true. There was a point. I watched this with Katie the other night, and there was a point during the movie. She's like, I get why you like this and why you picked this. This is a
Oh, yeah.
quintessentially you movie. It's very, it has aspects of like detective noir. It's a gangster film.
and it's craftily written.
It's very, like, the script alone is perfect. The script, in my opinion, is a perfect 10.
And that's why that is why
Oh, I
I
do-
made the comment
sorry,
about
just want to jump in and
freebie
say Jimmy Price
commercials,
was
so.
played by Kenneth Cranham,
Kenneth Cranham,
who is
yeah.
still working to this day.
Nice. Good for him.
Yeah.
So we've discussed the plot briefly since, again, like I said, because this is one of the more obscure ones. I want to just start with your general thoughts on the film as a whole before we actually get into discussion topics. So let's start with Stan. What were your general thoughts about the movie?
Well, I had seen this because it's Matthew Vaughn's breakthrough film, and I'd seen it because I was a huge fan of his work on Kick-Ass, and so I wanted to see early stuff, and then also knowing that he was also connected to the Guy Ritchie stuff, you know. Well, Snatch, he produced Snatch, but he was also involved with like Revolver and rock and roll and stuff like that. So the idea that he's in that brand, so it was always like, oh, so he did the Guy Ritchie stuff that I like. So he's got to be halfway decent in the sense of what he's going to do. So I saw this after I saw Kick-Ass for the first time, and discovered him and what he does, and always thought this was like high echelon of the contemporary British gangster films, the Rock'n'Rollers, the Guy Ritchie stuff, and then and it's pretty much just Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn, I think,
Right.
for that style of stuff. And
Nowadays, like since the 70s, yeah, British crime film is kind of a genre that died out after like the Friends of Eddie Coyle.
yeah, and the Michael Caine stuff, Get Carters and stuff like that.
Mike Cocaine.
Mike Cocaine. But this and both this and Snatch, and I told you, it's like I had a huge distaste for the idea of seeing Snatch the first time because I hate
Guy Ritchie.
I hate Guy Ritchie.
Because you married Madonna.
Well, did they get married? I thought.
Yes.
Yeah, no, they were
I guess they
married.
were married. But the idea that his American stuff sucks, but his British, it turns out his British stuff is pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's like Layer Cake. It's like, oh yeah, Layer Cake, I'll see that again, and it's a heartbeat. But then as I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, I dug Snatch better. You know,
Oh, really?
a lot more. And then I'm going to say one more time the idea that a lot of the writing was snipped in the bud by the commercial placements, you know, so it's like I lost the flow that I had with Snatch, you know, so it's like, but the thing with these films, with the Guy Ritchie stuff and the Matthew Vaughn stuff, they definitely started with the writing,
Oh, yeah.
and they circled everything around to the writing and the craft of the writing of these films and the noir aspects and what they were paying. And even though they have cell phones and it's supposed to be contemporary, it's very late 60s, early 70s hits and motifs. And
Right. You could replace the cell phones and layer cake with phone booths, and it would still be the same film.
because they still seem lost, and even though they have cell phones and can do instant connections, it still seems like it's really hard to make a connection even with cell phones, and that's what I like about this style of detective fiction, is because it wasn't easy to get hold of who you needed to get a hold of, you know. And so yeah, it's like as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh yeah. And Chris said it earlier about this being a very non-Bondian performance for
Oh,
Daniel
yeah.
Craig, and it's like the total. Again, he's the put upon guy, just trying to do.
He's a weasel.
He's a weasel, but the thing is, he's a fairly decent, honorable weasel,
No.
and you can have a beer with him, and it's cool. And And the only Bondian thing about this character, about Quadruple X, is that he can meet a girl.
Oh,
and
he's
5
smooth.
minutes later.
Yeah, he is. Mr. X is smooth AF in this movie.
But it gets interrupted. Talk about coitus interruptus, man. It's like he's always until the end.
Well, even that gets interrupted.
Yes.
Chris, what are your general thoughts before we get started in the discussion topics?
I ended up watching this because you said I have to.
And you're welcome.
No, it was. I know I didn't hate it, but it was a fun movie. Again, when I said I think about the vibe, it's just like it's very much a darker turn than Snatch. With Snatch, there's a sense of levity, almost as though they're kind of telling like a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. This one is very much, more hard hitting, I think, in a sense.
Maybe I should have reversed these. Maybe we should have watched.
Maybe
Snatch second.
I mean, maybe they should have been like between one of the other films, or one of the other films should have been between it. It's just one after the other is interesting though, because again, like Snatch was earlier, and then this came afterward, so it was interesting to see that progression.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I did enjoy was, yes, the writing was very good. It's never thrown in your face how the lessons that are thrown out there about leading this life of crime are very direct, but they're very also subtly shown off that none of the like I said in the group chat, none of the characters are too smart to ever not fall for it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just gonna say Daniel Craig because
Mr. X,
Daniel Craig, Mr. Dealer he thinks he's playing it smart, but there's no way you can smartly get out of it when people are plotting, when people notice you're trying to be smart about it and decide to drag you down, like Jimmy Price ultimately decides to do.
Yeah.
Or like Lionel decides to do.
That is the perfect segue because our first actual discussion topic is the gangster movie that does not make you want to be a gangster. You watch movies like Goodfellas or Casino, any of these old gangster films, and you're like, man, how cool would it be to be this kind of gangster, like be a fucking outlaw, have all this money and all this nice shit and everything, and no one fucks with you. Then you watch a movie like this where it's very much like, oh, this is kind of a shitty life. Like, yeah, there's a lot of money in it, but look at the fucking people you have to deal with.
And even the people you're friendly with can turn on you in an instant.
Exactly. And then you have to put up with shitheels like the Duke and his girlfriend, the improbably nicknamed Slasher. Her nickname is Slasher.
Yeah.
And she is the least intimidating character in the entire movie.
I really enjoyed the part during the robbery where she's got the gun on the fucking Serbians,
yes,
the war criminals, and the guy in charge is just slowly playing her.
Yeah, leading to her accidentally killing a guy who just wanted a gardener. He's just carrying his fucking plants.
And, she grew up to be the female lead in Shape of Water, right?
I still 3, 4, however long ago it came out, I still have not seen it.
I'll
Oscar
never know,
nominee now.
essentially.
Yeah,
She's an Oscar
Nice.
nominee now.
never seen Fish Fucker the movie.
It's really great.
I've heard. I do.
It is Del Toro, so.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Look, if you want anyone to handle fish fucking, I would assume it's Del Toro.
Out of all the available directors, yeah.
He seems to have a good grip on fantasy.
Uh-huh.
By the way, go see Pinocchio. Which, funny enough, there is a connection. The guy who plays Gaza in Layer Cake plays one of the characters
It's
in Pinocchio.
Bern Gorman, and
Yeah.
he's really great.
Who was also in taking it back to last year? Yeah, last year, 2021. He was in Dark Knight Rises.
And he's in
yeah.
the Pacific Rim.
And he's in Pacific Rim. Yeah, he's a
And-
great actor.
Right, yes, he was the
Torchwood.
scientist.
Yeah.
He's a major player in
I loved
Torchwood.
him.
Him
that
and
led to
Charlie
him-
Day, yeah.
And that led to him doing a guest spot on It's Always Sunny.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Bern Gorman is great.
Yeah.
Stan, did anything about this movie make you want to be a gangster?
I don't think
This
I've
has
ever
been 5 minutes of size.
I don't know if I've ever wanted to be a gangster in this. Even watching Godfather and Goodfellas, I don't think But the thing is, the difference is that in Britain, you have to go up against folks like the Krays and shit like that. So it's like there's a lot more fucked up gangsterism in Britain than there is here. You know, it's pretty much, you know, it's like you can only. Not everybody can be a real gangster here. You know, it's like you have to be in a certain mode and certain class to be a gangster here in the Goodfellas sense or in the Godfather sense. But you don't really have to go up against really psychotic
Serbian war criminals.
Maybe now these days, but back in the classic days of the Godfather and stuff, it was pretty much, you know, you're really only killing opposing business folk.
That's one of the things I've brought up the Serbian war criminal thing several times already, and we're just 20 minutes in because I feel like that's what really elevates the tension of this plot is up until the point at which you find out who the Duke robbed or stole that ecstasy from. Mr. X is mostly dealing with inside his own circle of criminals and
his
criminal
own
organizations.
network.
Yeah, his own network. Until you
People
find
he knows
out,
how to deal with.
Yeah, until you find out that the Duke stole those bills from Serbian war criminals known for beheading people.
Exactly.
With a super scary / tough enforcer named Dragon.
Yes.
Dragon. And that's another thing is like European gangsterism, it's not just, you know, running girls, running drugs, whatever. You're dealing with like the high level underground, hostile type situations, you know? So this is like dark ass. If you go deep into the European crime belly, you're dealing with, you know, underground snuff films, everything like that.
Well,
so it's like it's a total different level of crime, and
it's also because you drive 4 hours, like somewhere in America, you're still in America.
Yep.
You drive 4 hours in any direction in Europe, you're 10 different cultures away from where you were.
Right.
where people can just, you know, pick up the phone and say, I have $15,000. I want to buy 2 women that I can cut up, you know. So it's a
Jesus, you made this dark.
but it's a different level of.
To any of our European listeners, Long Walk Productions apologizes for the opinions of Stan Wilson Lee.
No, I think he's skipping ahead. They don't say on the phone they're going to cut them up, but they will.
Right.
They will.
Yeah, I mean, it's just implied. Chris, did anything about this movie make you want to be a gangster?
No.
Yeah.
Every part of that looked completely unpleasant.
Any delusions my young mind had about how cool it would be to live this kind of lifestyle were dashed by watching this movie. It is very realistic in its portrayal of how chaotic and insane this lifestyle would be, even if you try to run it like as a business, like Mr. X does.
And the same goes for it's hard to want to be a police officer or justice official in that type of situation. If you're doing that international crime stuff, it's dark shit, man. So it's like it goes both ways. It's like not many Europeans want to be police officers because of what they have to do to go through.
I mean, really, the 2 most lighthearted parts of the movie is the police raid that you find out is fake later.
Yep.
That's the only little bit of levity. And the other thing is the little toss off at the end of the scene of, you have a favorite gun?
Yeah. Yeah, that is. Do you tell the other? I hope you don't tell the other guns you have a
And
favorite.
they share a laugh for like the first time in the movie.
Yeah, that's good bonding right there.
That's the only you get.
Yeah.
Well, I should say that follows on the heels of one of those characters savagely beating the other because he found out about.
That's what
I got to talk about Jimmy Price's death in a minute, but you guys go ahead.
the bashing of the.
Oh yeah. The violence in this movie is very creative and not at all like the flashy action kind of scenes you'd see otherwhere. Yeah. Morty beating the shit out of Freddy at the diner.
Yes.
Starting with smashing.
And you find out why later, but why, and it just happens.
I'm gonna have to leave for a few days.
Oh yeah. How about 10? 10's a nice round number. As he's tossing money at the people, or at the guy he's about to beat
Yeah.
half to death. Yeah, smashes a glass ketchup bottle across his head, beats and kicks the shit out of him.
Pours an entire kettle of tea on him. Hot
Yes,
tea.
boiling hot tea over the man's face.
And it's filmed from Freddy's point of view.
Yes.
And you find out why later. He took a major fall because he was black, because they were helping to hide a body, and his old friend fucked up majorly.
yeah.
And it's even funnier that happens considering he just prior, like the last interaction he has with our dealer main character is he's telling him it's like you have to be smooth and run this like a business, and you can't deal with gangster characters like that. And then he just loses his shit.
Yeah. And then the other big one is, like Stan brought up, when Gene beats the shit out of Mr. X by opening up his freezer and slamming his face. We don't see what the inside of the contents are, but we can assume.
We find out later it's the Duke.
Well, yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. Was it the same freezer
Yes,
that
it
no,
was.
no, it
It
wasn't.
wasn't? Really? Okay.
No,
That was his fish freezer then.
Yes, Gene has 2 freezers in his shed.
Yeah.
One for his fish and one for the dead bodies. So
And the precursor to this is the last time you're in that room, he's gutting a fish.
yeah.
Right.
So he was Gene was smashing Mr. X's face against what I'm assuming are blocks of frozen ice
that's true. And frozen fish,
frozen
yeah.
fish.
Yes.
Mr. X's face afterwards, I love the special effects because his face is fucked up. Yeah.
He's fucked up, slumped on the floor, crying.
Yes. Which, I mean, I would be too.
They make up like
And-
right afterwards, but the idea
Only because Mr. X is able to prove the
Right.
reason he killed Jimmy Price is because he was ratting them out.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I love about the plot of this is they don't rely on the poor communication kills aspect too
No.
badly, because any other movie, like Mr. X, would either not get a chance to explain or he would get the chance and then for some reason just not. And so after the movie, you'd be like, well, why the fuck didn't he just tell him what happened?
Well,
that's what this movie does.
That is the clearest moment because I understand that Jimmy Price probably wouldn't have cared, but he doesn't really take a moment to say, hey, he stole from Serbian war criminals.
Right.
But that's following. That's Gene, who I should point out is played by Cole Meany, most
Yes.
well known for being O'Brien from Star Trek.
Yes. Absolutely terrifying in this
Yeah.
movie.
And
he is.
he is, and that's because he's Jimmy Price's enforcer. And the reason he's beating Mr. X is because he found out. He figured out that Mr. X killed Jimmy Price, which he does. Interestingly enough, that's set up that at first that whole scene where he finally decides to kill Jimmy after getting sold out. It really seems like it's a dream sequence at first.
Kind of, yeah.
He's just imagining it, but no, it's like it's real. And what really does and sets it off is it's the point where he goes to pop Jimmy Price in his garden, and Jimmy has his head turned because he's watering a plant late at night, and he hesitates to shoot, and then Jimmy realizes someone's behind him, turns around, and he gets to look Jimmy dead in the eyes, and there's just all the sound drops out, and there's just a very silent pop.
Yep.
As he kills him, and then there's a pause, and then he runs away, and it's almost comedic in the sense of like it was a real stutter to it, and then he goes.
He actually even lowers the gun.
Yeah.
When Jimmy turns around and
and he pulls it back up.
they have
and
a
shoots
moment. Oh, is this going to happen?
Him. Yeah,
And then he brings up the gun again, and like he said, in the total silence, no sound, and the
and I believe it's like having to look him in the eyes is what really messes him up.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the montage afterwards, I think, is absolutely brilliant because Mr. X goes home, starts pounding scotch and taking some kind of pill.
Either I don't think it's maybe it's like I don't know, aspirin or something, but something that.
Oh, I thought it was antidepressant.
something like that, something the downer.
Yeah, it's some kind of downer because he's crushing them up and putting them in his scotch.
So that it will hit his bloodstream quicker
Yeah.
because he clearly cannot sleep.
The transitions in this movie are brilliant, but especially like the repeated jump cuts of him looking in his mirror while he's
That
drunk
was
and
that was the movie poster. I guess States and UK and Europe was the cascading reflections.
Yeah, until the last one where he closes his medicine cabinet and he's dressed pristinely in his nice suit, which
The only other Bond moment.
right, no one can wear a suit like Daniel Craig.
He can wear a suit, man. I totally agree with you. He has the body type where every suit just fits around, and he's got all the angles that needs to be set up. He's a great suit wearer, yes.
Well, that's what happens when you're a big-time cocaine dealer who can afford a nice British tailor.
Or James Bond.
Or James Bond, which is sort of the same thing.
It is.
So we
have to apologize to James Bond now. No, he's not a drug dealer.
No.
I'm not apologizing.
That
to
man's done
Fleming?
terrible things.
Ian Fleming.
I'm
No.
not apologizing to MI6. We've talked about the plot of this movie and how crazy it gets. It starts with Mr. X just wanting to cash out and retire. He gets asked to find an associate's daughter. He finds out about the 1,000,000 tabs of ecstasy. He has to hire 2 con men from Liverpool to help find the daughter.
We never find the daughter, do we?
No, he never does.
I assume the Lionel, because when the businessman that he thinks he's finding, the man's daughter he thinks he's finding, takes him hostage and explains that he's been used as a patsy to find her as a bargaining tool.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he had a handle on where she was.
Probably, yeah.
Because at the end, she's sent to a treatment center in Arizona.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. But anyway, yeah, Mr. X, he meets the nephew of the Duke, the guy who stole the pills. Through him, he meets the Sidney's,
Ben Whishaw.
Yep, Ben Whishaw meets his girlfriend, played by Sienna Miller. Gets kidnapped by Eddie Temple. It just gets progressively more complicated. The amount of associates that Mr. X has in this movie, because that's not even talking about Trevor and Shanks, the other 2 gangsters he's trying to sell the ecstasy to. So my question:
If anybody wanted to be a gangster, made me want to be a gangster in this movie, it would have been them. I think
Trevor and Shanks.
Trevor and Shanks, I think, were 2 of the cooler.
Life just went on for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that pairing because they're the ultimate George and Lenny. Trevor is very quiet and composed,
Unbothered, yep.
completely unbothered, whereas Trevor is the shaky,
Fidgety,
fidgety, prone to shouting one of the 2.
I probably Morty was a good gangster. I thought
He was a great gangster, and up to and including beating the shit out of a man with a.
And Tom Hardy.
Yes, that's how I got Katie to watch this with me. I was like, it's got Tom Hardy in it. Oh, I'm interested.
He says
in
3
a
words.
very early role that he's not in
a very
there
small
a whole
role.
lot.
Yeah.
He's great in it.
He's great.
for
Yeah.
when he's there.
And when at the end when he's, okay, thanks for making me the leader, but I'm leaving, and the
king is
goodbye
dead.
toast.
Yeah.
The king is dead. Long live the king. And then he does his toast.
I mean, that's just the whole
to
of Mr. X's character. It's just like he thinks he's managed to stay above this in a way, but then it's just the whole movie just shows how inextricably pulled down into it he's been.
I think the character I feel worse for. We're getting off topic, but this just reminded me. His Mr. X's 4th associate, Terry, the poor guy who has to stake out
Him.
the
Yeah.
Duke's warehouse for. It's implied like 3 or 4 straight days he keeps an eye on this place.
Yeah, he said day is like you stay on it day and night. It was like, night. He's like, I've already been here all day. He's like, day and night. I was like, but I.
Yeah, poor Terry. But anyway,
And
so
what about the hitman that came down to help him against
That was,
Dragon?
Mr. Lucky, the one
Mr.
that
Lucky. And
Trevor and Shanks didn't even like to begin with.
Yeah, Trevor and Shanks. Yeah, he was their friend who was always on headphones, and you find out during the car ride, it's because he's trying to learn French.
Yeah, he's got a test next week.
It's like Dragon is just like totally. I mean,
I've been watching.
I've been watching and totally takes out Lucky like nobody's business, and it's like, okay, that's a gangster.
And one of the most legitimately scary characters who you don't even see his face until the last 2 minutes of the film.
Oh yeah, it's
he's
like
just a young guy.
again, it's just that one of those moments where Mr. X realizes, I'm not smarter than this.
Exactly.
So with all of that said, rival gangs, Serbian war criminals, 1,000,000 tabs of ecstasy, missing girls. Is the plot of the film too complicated, did you think? Let's start with Chris this time.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Just, I mean, again, like there were a couple of things that surprised me, but then again, once I thought about it, it's like, oh, it's because I wasn't paying as close attention as I could have been. But on a casual view, it sank in pretty well for me. Now, I mean, it depends from person to person how much they're going to get, how much thought they're going to give it beyond, oh wow, cool stuff happening. But
Right. Stan, what about you? Is the plot too complicated?
I wouldn't say that because if there's a moment they end up explaining it somehow, whether it's a voiceover or they retread a moment and you're caught right back up. You know what's even more difficult? Snatch may have had more because you had to like, okay, that happened there, but I'm telling you, I just saw Bullet Train, and that had moments where you had to like, okay, I need to see how this fits together.
Connect the dots.
And connect the dots, and in a much more strong way than you have to in Layer Cake, I believe. So.
sorry, I'll give you the best connect the dots moment that when I thought about and realized I was very pleased by was in the final bit where they're trying to get the pills and they get raided by the police. Well, why did that raid happen? Well, Mr. X set it up so that it scared off the other guys, and so they could get the pills. And it's like, well, what does that have to do? What about Dragon? Well, Dragon's been watching, but he doesn't know that they're fake cops.
Right.
You realize, oh, when he gives him the Duke's head and he goes, "Are we square?" and he just leaves. It's like, okay, so he bought that those were actual police. So they're just considering, those pills are gone. You're in the clear.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing left to recover at this point.
Right.
Despite Mr. X's best efforts. Like you said, with Dragon clearly having been watching this interaction, he knows that Mr. X went there that day to get these pills, presumably for him and to square their deal.
Right.
And it all goes to shit, and it's not Mr. X's fault as far as he knows. So
Their honor is satisfied with the Duke's head.
Their honor is satisfied with the Duke's head, and also Quadruple X knows that what's his face is fucking with him. So at the end, when he triple crosses, is it Lionel?
Eddie Temple.
Eddie Temple.
Yeah,
Eddie Temple. When he triple crosses them, and his people get fucked up by the two guy
Trevor and Shanks.
Trevor and Shanks, and they get the pills back. So he has his, and he's able to pay off whatever debts and go and retire the way he wanted to and stuff. So the idea that he's had a plan, it just took him a little while longer than he expected. So yeah, I was not thrown off plot wise or thrown off. The caper was what the caper should have been.
Right.
And the twists weren't, I don't want to say arbitrary. The twists were well thought out and plotted so that it made sense as when they were revealed. Because there's been plenty of times when you watch a twist in something, you go, oh, that's bullshit.
That's bullshit.
I think if this isn't the kind of movie that you were expecting going into it, I think I can see how somebody would think that this plot is too complicated. If you thought you were just going to watch a
more actiony thing,
more actiony like British caper, and you show up to this, I can see how you'd be confused.
sure, yeah.
To me,
It's hard to watch in a lot of stuff. I mean, in the sense, if you go in and think, oh, this is going to be a Daniel Craig
action movie.
It's a lot darker than that.
Yeah.
And he's not the action hero you're going to be looking for, because first he hates guns right off the bat, and then he steals one.
I mean,
he doesn't steal it.
No, he's given to him by Gene.
But Gene says, before he stole it off me, and
well, I think that was just Gene trying to pass the buck.
Yeah.
And what a gun it was like the whole thing was a silencer cylinder.
Well, Mr. X is not a gun guy, because when he gets the like I guess a German Luger, it's a World War II pistol. He picks it up and he holds it and he's like pretending to play with it, and Gene is like,
Right.
oh my god,
Point it up there.
Well, yeah, the first thing he does is accidentally point it at Gene.
just point it up.
I'd say it's not unnecessary because it does contribute to the plot. I think the most confusing thing about the movie might be Jimmy Price's motivation.
Sure.
Once they get into the whole thing and Eddie starts explaining that Jimmy got taken in by somebody from an African nation who was gathering money, and then the nation got taken over by communists, insurgents.
Well, there was a revolution, and the people they were dealing with weren't in power anymore.
Right. And so Eddie has that line where he's like, oh, whatever, it's just a simple $500,000, right? And Jimmy has to say under his breath, like hand over his face, 13 million. Eddie's reaction where he just starts laughing at him so hard that he's wheezing is so fantastic. Just trying to wheeze out his lines through laughter. I love it. So moving on, just in general, favorite moments, lines, characters. We'll start again with Chris. What really stood out to you?
Really stood out to me. Well, I will say this isn't a bad thing. I'm going to rag on it a little bit, but I thought it was really funny how they showed off that Jimmy Price was at that 70s gangster thing, but they just cut to where he was sitting in the back, but not showing him. It was just like, but it was
you just hear his voice.
Yeah.
So that they didn't have to hire like a young Jimmy Price or a young Gene.
Yeah, I think speaking of most of Cole Meany's performances, Gene is fantastic.
It is great.
His interactions. I think my favorite part was, again, illustrating how much Mr. X thinks he's smart, but not smart enough when Dragon calls him on his cell phone for the first time, and he's like, you think he's going to try and meet up and have.
Why don't you just come around my apartment and we'll talk about this like adults?
Do you know where I live? No. Well, then fuck off.
Fuck off.
Well, fuck off then.
Hangs up on him. Yeah, I do. I love that moment so much.
It's like, oh, that's not smart.
No, he even admits later. Yeah, I'm starting to regret that.
Yeah, when Dragon calls him again.
Yeah.
But that's before the sniper incident.
Well, yeah, it's when he's talking to Clarky and Terry, Tom Hardy's character and his other associate. He tells them what happened, and they call him out on it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm starting to regret that." I love it. Stan, what about you? Favorite lines, moments, characters?
There is a bunch. There really is. Something that is really normal for these type of movies and for movies in general is, I really liked how they played with it and how Daniel Craig was just a natural person in the moment. But when he first gets to the hotel room with Sienna Miller's character, and she goes, patience comes after just inviting, is like, why do we have to wait? What about lunch? And then she gets there and they're making out, and it's like, what? Patience, good things come to those who wait. And she goes off to get dressed, and he does this little flip off the bed, to take off and it's like this really natural, human thing to do that is totally not actory, and it was really fun to watch. And then he gets kidnapped.
Well, I think that's even funnier after the fact, because like you said, people noticed this movie more because he became James Bond, and then for him to have this really un-Bond moment of, I'm gonna get some.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, I love that,
and
because
I laughed really hard.
The brilliant thing about that scene is ostensibly the entire reason he set up this meeting was to find out where Sidney's at.
Yeah,
because
right.
Sidney can lead him to the Duke. It just happens to work out in his favor, and then not in his favor ultimately. That
he's gonna get lucky.
Sidney's or not Sidney. Tammy, Sienna Miller's character, Tammy's good to go. She wanted him from the second she saw him.
Yeah.
So he gets the information he needs, and he's probably thinks he's going to get laid. I love it. To make that phone call after she goes in the bathroom, he flips over on his stomach. He's laying there on the edge of the bed with his phone to his ear. And then the poor guy gets kidnapped.
That yellow blah blah. But yeah, it was just so. I mean, it's so in place for any regular movie, and then, but just in this juxtaposition in this type of film, and then just the naturalness of Daniel Craig, just being Daniel Craig, and like Chris said, oh, I'm gonna get some, it's like, and so stuff like that didn't play as a normal British gangster film or film noir or whatever. That was really cool for me, and the fact that Sienna Miller's character doesn't get mad at him and make him go through all this whole thing of making it up to her for just leaving, and because at the end they're on their way to do whatever, it's like, but the idea that they end up together, is really cool. And she didn't make him work for it after that. But
Well, she didn't make him work for it to start with.
but I just love the naturalness of it.
Yeah. I watched this with Katie the other night, and when she walks out of the bathroom in that really like fancy, expensive lingerie, and he's not there, Katie was like, "Oh, I feel so bad for her. She bought that really nice lingerie, and she got all dolled up.
That's
and
what she bought for lunch."
And she probably thinks that he just like left her there.
Well, that is it's a small comedic beat, and at the same time, there is that feeling before you cut away. Oh, right, Daniel Craig's in danger.
Right.
That's exactly.
There were two other things I wanted to touch on. One, I like speaking to it earlier. I love the whole juxtaposition of his character, where he essentially gets to be an unreliable narrator the whole movie, because he's talking about how he tries to keep things neat and put together, and then you see him betray his real character when he's put to the test in these various situations. And then the ending, I thought, was very well done, because they told you that. Now, I went and looked in the extras, and there are two alternate versions of the ending. There's one where he and Sienna Miller's character just drive away, and there's another where they drive, where it's sort of shades of the ending they went with. They drive away, and then the Duke's nephew, is following them to get his revenge, which he does get in the actual ending.
Yeah.
Because they make you think, oh, he is going to drive away, and he's going to have this meta moment. And again, the nice reveal is like, I didn't even tell you my real name, or you never even knew my name throughout this whole thing. And then he turns back from the camera and gets shot to death by the Duke's nephew.
Yeah, which is apparently how British audiences wanted it.
Yeah.
Because the driving away into the sunset ending was like the more American happy ending type of thing that British audiences didn't like, and then they showed them the ending with him getting shot and killed, and British audiences were like, yes, that's the ending we prefer.
It's thematically appropriate for
It
anything
is
else.
thematically appropriate,
Because
totally.
I watched that drive away ending, and was like, oh.
Yeah, it's anticlimactic.
And I mean, and then of course the maybe there'll be a sequel ending where the Duke's nephew just follows him.
Right.
But yeah, no, what makes that ending even better is he's bleeding out, and there's a chance he could not die. But then you also think about the fact of when the other guy offed himself in that flashback, Gene says, "Well, we weren't going to call cops. We were a bunch of gangsters. We can't have cops coming around here." So, and that thought was immediately in my head. There's like, no one's going to call cops to come around, look at the country club where the gangsters come to.
Yeah, I'd say the mitigating factor there is that it's a nice country club and not like a 70s underground disco.
I thought about that too, but again, I mean, cops would be there and would have pretense to nose around.
Right, exactly. That's too many questions.
And the fact that Ben Whisshaw's character goes, "I'm sorry, but I had to do this." This was my job at the moment.
Yeah, even he couldn't rise above who he thought that he was, like this gangster lifestyle.
I have more favorites.
By all means, go ahead.
I really liked the guy who beats Larry up.
Morty.
Morty's. I think he was my favorite of Daniel Craig's group. Even though I love Tom Hardy's a little bit, but he didn't do enough to make me just like.
Right.
But Morty, I loved. Totally loved. Combe.
Gene Colm Meaney.
Colm Meaney's character.
I knew it was going to happen.
Colm Meaney's Gene.
Colm Meaney's Gene.
Mean Gene.
Loved it. And one of my favorite moments was the Gene beating of Mr. X over the ice chest. I thought was, first of all, the staging of the stunt, brilliant. The filming of the stunt, brilliant. Perfect moments where they cut away back to Gene, so what's ever happening there can be done, and then and then when they finally throws him off, and Daniel Craig and he just like, oh shit, I got to explain this. It's like
it's the most graphic thing you see in the movie.
It's the most graphic thing you see in the movie, and then it's also so pertinent to what happens next, because he has to stop this, and he totally understands where Gene is coming from. So there is none of this, it's like, why did you beat me up? It's like, this is the life I chose. So it's like, and I killed him. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to have to stand some retribution, but they go and they do it. And and I really think they're friends. Him and Gene are friends. But the thing is, Gene still has that moment when Mr. X is going off to do whatever. And he says, if you cross me again, I will kill you. You know?
Yeah, no.
So there was the understanding was still there, and it was an honorable understanding. And it's like, but I still believe that their friendship was strong and tight.
Yeah.
And stuff like that in the movie all throughout. I think it kept it so grounded, and there was a sense of family or a sense of brotherhood in there that kept so many of these
Honor among thieves
that kept these relationships really strong and powerful, I think.
The other thing I really liked was, because I did actually not catch it until Mr. X brought it up, was who really killed the Duke. Because that little twist is like, you don't, because again, I didn't catch it that, Dragon asked he wanted the Duke and the pills. And it was like, well, wait, didn't he already kill the Duke? No, he didn't. It turns out Gene did it with.
Just like he killed Crazy Larry.
Yep.
Which has one of the best cutaway moments in the film because, as it's explained, Crazy Larry used to be the person running the gang that Gene and Morty and Jimmy Price ran with. But he had a penchant for raping young men and sometimes killing young men, but insisted that he wasn't gay, leading to the cutaway where the actor where Crazy Larry looks directly into the camera and says, "Fucking females is for poofs."
Yep.
Like, what the fuck?
I'm so
what kind of
I'm
weird?
so manly. I only fuck dudes.
Yeah, like what kind of weird cocaine energy is that?
I could see him twisting it as a power move. Basically.
Right. Yeah, like you said, I'm too manly to fuck women. What?
But it goes in. It's like, how much time did he spend in prison before all this? It's like, so
well,
it's
no,
like,
it's
that's another
how
can of
Now
worms.
here you go. It's like, I'm too manly to fuck women because you know what women do? They take dick.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. God, fucking
But
cocaine logic, man.
also another random aside. I really love the look of that actor who played Gene second in the scene. Well, you see him a couple times.
Oh,
you
yeah, his
see
driver and his...
his driver, the guy who helps off Slasher and Duke.
The casual way, like, a Slasher is ranting about going to the cops and then gets shot in the head. And it cuts over to Gene and his number two, who's just casually standing there holding a gun, no expression on his face.
Oh yeah, and you see it when right before he kills the Duke, is just like you saw Gene gives him the signal that he obviously gave about Slasher, which was just a kind of nod / side glance, and it's just boom, boom, right in the Duke's chest.
Yeah. Now, see, out of everything about being a gangster, I think having a number two who will just casually shoot people for me is the
That's
thing
cool.
I want. Yeah, that part I can get behind. Give me a number two who will
He
just...
doesn't say shit and he gets stuff done. I mean, that's
Exactly.
Yeah.
and efficiently,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Me personally, like, they have such minor but important roles in the movie. I love Cody and Tiptoes.
Cody and Tiptoes are great.
The two Liverpool con
Oh, yeah.
artists
Yeah.
who are shockingly good at what they do.
Oh yeah,
They
'Cause
track.
they seem like a couple of louses because when they go to talk to Mr. X, he's like, so, "Wait, who am I tonight?"
Right. And then they find, like, within less than 24 hours, they find the daughter's boyfriend. No explanation how, really. They're just like, oh, well, we know the drug dealers to talk to around here. Boom. They found her boyfriend and figured out, 5 minutes later, figure out where she fucked off to. And then at the end, they lead the fake drug raid, leading
Yes.
to Cody getting
Yes.
out of a car wearing that wonderful fake mustache, pretending to be a police captain.
They were great.
Yeah.
They're along with Shanks and Trevor.
Trevor and Shanks, yeah. The
They should
supporting-
have. Those four should have a movie together.
Yeah, the spin-off. Cody and Tiptoes, Trevor and Shanks.
I think it would be great.
As far as lines go, the lines may not be as memorable as some of the ones like in Snatch, but Michael Gambon's layer cake speech at the
Yes.
end.
Yeah.
Because there was a point where Katie asked me, why is this called layer cake? And I was like, oh, just wait. Michael Gambon has a beautiful speech, a monologue about why this movie is called Layer Cake. But my favorite in the whole movie isn't necessarily the line itself, but it's the delivery, and this has stuck with me since I saw it. Towards the end of the film, when Mr. X is summing up his plan, he says, "Did I really think that Eddie Temple was going to give me $3 million for those pills? Did I fuck?" And I don't know why, but just it's in a voiceover narration, but just the delivery of "Did I fuck?" I love that so much.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I never heard that phrase before. I don't know if it is a British-ism or what. But just that way of like, what do you think? I'm a fucking idiot. Like, just that expression itself has stuck with me, and I still use it.
Either
on
that or
occasion.
that feeling of like, were you born yesterday? As like,
Right? Did I fuck? I love it. And then
I enjoyed his little quip about not even the drug dealers working on the weekend.
yes. Oh man, everything about veteran gentleman gangster Eddie Temple is when they're trying to have small talk in Eddie's library, which is honestly goals. You enter into it through a fake wall. And then he's got a ladder in a second floor of his library when they're going back and forth. How is Faust? How's your family? What is this, a fucking Vickers Tea Party? That's something else I need to add to my repertoire.
Yeah.
What is this, a Vickers Tea Party?
I also enjoyed I also appreciated the metaphor of the layer cake, because he's basically telling us, like, if you're not on top, you're stuck in the middle of it.
Or you're on the bottom.
You're on some layer of it that's not as good as the top.
Yeah. So that is it. That rounds out my perfect 10 films. That was 4 for each of us. We've gone from Lord of the Rings to Layer Cake. So my last question as we wrap up is, what were some of your honorable mentions? What did you consider for your perfect 10 picks that just didn't make it in there? Because I think you guys know, I was considering
what
changing.
almost made the list, because you almost did actually.
Yeah,
change
I
yours.
was considering changing my list all the way up until the last minute when I finally just said fuck it and went with one. We talked about it already because of Daniel Craig, but Casino Royale was one that I almost considered in place of this, or just due to back-to-back Daniel Craig films. It's the perfect Bond film. I love it. That and Skyfall are the best of the Craig era Bond films. There was a point where I almost changed it up till we talked about Mad Max Fury Road. And then taking it back to the 80s once again, we almost talked about Back to the Future and Back to the Future Part 2. But one of the caveats when I picked this for this year was that we couldn't talk about something that we'd already talked about, which excluded my 2 favorite movies, Pulp Fiction and Memento. Which had there not been that caveat, or had we not talked about them before, those are 2 that we definitely would have discussed. Chris, what were your honorable mentions?
There were a total of 5. I sat down with that. I'm sure I've mentioned them before. I would have put Airplane on the list.
Ah, nice.
Airplane instead of, that would have been the excuse to talk about a bunch of other different, spoof films. Because I could easily have done just a small selection of just spoof films that I love, because it's a good genre that unfortunately got murdered by Seltzer and Freeberg and other watered down versions. I almost put Super Troopers on there. There's nothing I hold so dear as I think I mentioned during the Clue one, which is ensemble comedies. A good ensemble comedy is just brilliant. I almost put, and it would have been timely, what with the Criterion Collection came out, WALL-E.
Oh, yeah.
WALL-E, I think I've said before on here, I was shocked that did not end up being one of the ones we discussed.
Almost. It was almost there, but I connected better with the Wreck-It Ralph themes more. Although I really deeply personally love WALL-E. Since I decided to do Christmas in July, it could have either been Christmas Vacation or Muppet Christmas Carol.
Nice.
One of the it's been said, one of the more shockingly faithful adaptations of the story.
Featuring Michael Caine acting the shit out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other one I would have put on there is my other favorite spoof of all time, Spaceballs.
Nice. Stan, did you have any honorable mentions?
And we've talked about this. Several of the films that have influenced me forever, I didn't include because I wanted to include my Korean influence, but I didn't have Taxi Driver or any of the Scorsese films that I grew up with. Mean Streets, Raging Bull, none of those made it. Animation stuff. I would have loved to have talked about how I cried in the theater during Beauty and the Beast, and or the death of Bambi's mom and Bambi. That would have been.
All right,
those two films would have been great.
I've finally done it. I've spent the last few weeks trying to come up with a theme for next year's The Long Walk Talks, and now it's going to be 12 months of things that made Stan cry.
Oh, so we're watching.
We could do 12 movies of that.
So we're watching Detective Pikachu 12 times.
And then
that's right. We didn't talk about Detective Pikachu, which is one of my new all-time favorites.
You're welcome.
That's because of Chris, man. If you haven't seen Detective Pikachu, you have to see Detective Pikachu. It's just amazing on all fronts.
Detective Pikachu, I choose you. Stan chooses you.
And then we didn't, and again we didn't, because we didn't talk about it, did we? But once upon a time in Hollywood.
Well, we talked about it as part of the Tarantino discussion.
Did we get?
Yes.
Was that included?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
I guess it was, wasn't it? Yeah. But
that would have been December of 2020.
Yeah. You're right.
What else
2
was going
years
on?
ago.
What else was going on then?
I don't know. There was a lot going on. I feel like in 2020.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
Did we meet in 2020?
Yes.
2020 was the year of Tarantino.
So we figured out a way to.
See, this is what I'm struggling with is, we've done 3 years of themes now. 2020 was the year of Tarantino. 21, we did Kevin Smith and Christopher Nolan because I wanted to pick two very opposite directors. And then this year, 22, we each picked 4 films that we considered a perfect 10. I'm considering not doing a theme next year and just making it a free-for-all like we started with. But how do you guys feel about a free-for-all?
I mean, we could talk about something other than movies.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I guess we could.
We could do like we did that first year or two where we split it up, part movies, part video games, part TV shows and stuff like that.
Right.
So we could go back to that. But if we just talked about movies,
that's right.
free-for-all.
2019 was a themed year, too, because that was the end of the decade.
Yes.
Yeah, we did the decade retrospectives. Yeah.
We could go back to that.
We argued about what constitutes a decade.
I still won. But no.
The liar.
There's just honorable mention wise. And it's funny how many good films have ended up in the last 5-10 years. That have jumped their way up on my list, and I think on our lists as general. In general, is like it's funny to say that films since 2015 are now the best films we've seen. So, but there is.
It happened after my section, but if we went back and did another round, Bullet Train would be on there for me.
Yeah.
Bullet Train, definitely.
One of the best movies of this year. I could have very easily put Nope on that list, too. Nope was brilliant.
Get Out. Get Out was one that I was considering because that of that group of films, that was a surprise in that, okay, this is why we make movies, and so Get Out could have easily been talked about, yeah. And
if we could, we could if we just
Knives
go
Out.
Knives Out is great. If we could just have a free for all next year, I very much tried to avoid it being too recent with our discussions because I never wanted to be a current events podcast.
Yeah, plus I'm bad about seeing movies, so
yeah. I'd love to talk about the Batman.
Oh God, yeah.
Nope, the Batman, and Bullet Train, 3 of the best movies that came out this year, in my opinion. Chris. Are there any wrestling pay-per-views coming out this month? Are we done with wrestling for the year?
I want to say yes. I think, because I know AEW doesn't have an event this month.
And WWE already did theirs, right? Let's vamp for time. Well,
I want to say yes because
I figured if anyone knew off the top of their heads, it'd be you.
Sadly, no. But don't worry, the internet is here to save my ass once again.
I usually find out when dogs tells me.
Texas.
Yeah. By the way, we're watching a pay-per-view this Sunday night.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, okay.
Basically. I honestly forget most of the time myself. Aside from NXT, no. I
Okay,
think
so
we're-
there's a takeover this month.
there's a takeover. There's a takeover. What's today's date?
Today is the 11th.
It was last night.
Oh, so I need to text Shelby, see if we're doing this is a takeover.
Yeah, but there's nothing happening until I think they started this either last year or the year before. They stopped doing them in December, and then or at least nothing major, because the next one isn't scheduled till the Royal Rumble.
Gotcha. So this might end up being the last Long Walk podcast episode of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a lot this year, including that week that we did 3 wrestling pay-per-views.
Oh, God.
Which I love all of you. I support
wanna
all
do
of
that
you.
again.
I never want to do that again.
I don't think I love wrestling that much either.
No. So I'll announce in January whether we're doing a theme or not, or whether we're doing a free-for-all. But I hope that everyone has enjoyed this Perfect Tens discussion. I hope you'll come back and join us again next year. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm sure that 2023 is going to have a lot of good content. At least I hope. It'll be
hope
our
so.
first full year under the leadership of Triple H instead of Vince McMahon.
AEW should be putting their game out sometime next year.
And we'll see if AEW survives through the end of 2023.
They probably will. I will say before we go, do you guys have any movie or any other related type of thing, resolutions for the next year, things you want to do?
Oh, I stopped doing New Year's resolutions a long time ago.
It's not an official resolution, but I decided what I wanted to try and do is catch up on my backlog, which I've told you guys about before. I just want to illustrate it real quick. Here's a list of the movies in my possession that I need to watch.
That you own but haven't watched yet?
Yes.
Nice.
I own in some capacity. That's about 55. And then there's TV shows that I also need to do.
If anything, that's
Not as long, but
something I
considering
need
they're
to do.
TV shows, that's going to be on there too. It's like, and I have another page of extra stuff. It's like, yeah, I gotta go. I'm gonna try and go back and actually get through everything this year.
I do have to
Or
catch up
coming
on a lot of stuff to get prepared for the next phase of Marvel stuff.
That's
so.
not important. They don't reference that shit.
But still, do my Daredevil, finish my Daredevil stuff.
Do you have Disney Plus? Yeah,
I do.
You do. Yeah, you've got a lot to catch up on. Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. I suppose at some point we could also we spent some time talking about our favorite Marvel films and discussing the MCU leading up to Endgame. We could do a post.
We ranked them for arbitrary reasons.
We did. I suppose we could do a post Endgame Phase 4 discussion.
How we're feeling after the snap.
Yeah. But we'll figure that out for next year. There may or may not be an NXT TakeOver episode coming out soon, or this could be our last one of the year. So Stan, if people want to reach out to you online, follow you online, where can they do that at?
Hashtag
Chris, if people want to reach out to you
14.5.
online or follow you online, where can they do that at?
I am regrettably still at Twitter.
Ew, why?
Ew.
I don't know why. It's like watching a flan collapse in real time. I mean, there's still. I mean, I don't go there for fun, but I do go there to see interesting discussions that aren't related to Elon Musk.
Yeah. Which are few and far between these days.
They are. He's trying so hard to make everything about him.
Isn't it though?
He's just courting the right wing. But
Well, what's your handle?
Chris the OK.
Nice. If you want to follow me online personally, you can do that on Instagram at DB Hensley. If you want to keep up with the shows on social media, we still have Twitter. Handled by Shelby Ray Patterson from This Is a Takeover and This Is a Rewind. And you can follow us on Twitter at Long Walk Podcast and at @this_pod. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can do that at Long Walk Podcast and at This Is a Takeover. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us or search for Long Walk Productions and Long Walk Podcasts on Facebook. To see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming, you can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on.
Peace out.
Stay tuned in 2023 for our Cocaine Bear episode, which will be happening.
Oh shit! Yeah, cocaine. That's my resolution.
That's 2023. That's our entire theme. It's cocaine there.
Yep.
Thanks in
Buy your
advance.
Christmas presents now.